And shifting our focus to the explosive weekend debate. Now, the Canadian Prime Minister's unprecedented declaration in the Parliament that the government of India engineered the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil has generated an unmatched media interest from Pakistan to Russia to even China. The resonance of which have even been felt in the UK now, in Scotland and in London, with prominent members of the Indian community being targeted. Now, taking out rogue elements in another country isn't new. And who else but the United States of America, Russia and China spearhead those very acts? But to disclose to the world any evidence against India will never be an easy task for Canada. Also, what it would lead to is the risk of exposing that the rest of the Five Eyes was snooping on Indian authorities, which is a strategic ally to some of them. So essentially, what Justin Trudeau has done is cast aspersions on a sovereign nation and then hasn't been able to follow it up with credible evidence within a reasonable amount of time, which is an offense by itself. Now, whether it was an act of revenge for getting the cold shoulder on his India trips or an act to please his Sikh supporters in Canada with Khalistan or secessionist tendencies, with whose help he is currently in power. Now, all of this is rather simple matter of deduction. It is perhaps a bit of both. Also, with every passing day, the statement first made by India in response to the allegations that Canada had made on how Canada offers a safe haven to terrorists, that stands justified. In fact, evidence does seem to be stacking up against Canada as more and more information is tumbling out. The latest one being the link between the killed separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar and a trusted aide of Canada's Prime Minister, Canadian MP Sukh Dhaliwal. The connection runs so deep, we are told, that despite Nijjar being on the no-fly list, Sukh Dhaliwal, who is also accused of having links with the Pakistan ISI, reportedly helped Nijjar get a permanent residency in Canada. Trudeau's MP, though, goes on the offensive as we speak to him, saying that it is India sending separatist forces into Canada. Separately, Justin Trudeau has said that he is serious about building closer ties with India. So we are asking tonight, what explains this doublespeak?
Mr. Dhaliwal, there are various allegations against you that you are very close to Pakistan ISI and the role of ISI is under scanner for the Nijjar's killings. What is your take?
This is totally ridiculous claim. Because being a member of parliament, I would not be able to stay anywhere closer to any of the foreign state agencies. And I can tell you, whoever is giving you this information is totally wrong and irresponsible.
And joining us this evening is Defence Analyst Lieutenant General K.J. Singh, Dean Baxendale, who is a columnist who is joining us live from Toronto. Also joining us is Mr. Prabhu Dayal, who is a former diplomat. Mr. Dayal, I'll begin with you this evening. I'd like to actually see you dissect the statements that have been made by the Canadian Prime Minister. He first goes on to say, after the allegations against India, that Canada wants close ties with India, and then he also says that he has received assurances from the United States that Antony Blinken, would be raising the issues concerning Canada and India with S. Jaishankar when the duo meets in Washington, D.C. He has also gone on to say that it's important that the US be involved in the following up on credible allegations that the agents of Indian government killed a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. How does one read these two statements?
Well, first of all, the point to be noted is that Justin Trudeau has not backed his allegation with a shred of evidence. India has repeatedly said that if you have evidence, please share it with us. And the External Affairs Minister very, very specifically said that if this intelligence is shared with us, we will look into it and take action. Secondly, There is no doubt that Canada has been harboring a number of extremist Sikhs who are indulging in anti-India activities. In fact, Canada has become a hotbed for such activities, and there is credible evidence which indicates that Pakistan's ISI is behind the extremist Sikhs who are located in Canada. These people have attacked the Indian High Commission. They have put up posters calling for the assassination of Indian diplomats. Now, all that has not been checked by the Canadian government. In fact, now some action seems to be taken. Some of the posters have been removed. But anti-India activities have allowed to go on unimpeded in Canada. So, if Justin Trudeau says that he wants to work with India, action lies with him. He has made an allegation that the agents of the government of India assassinated Hardeep Singh Nijjar. We must make sure that he backs this with evidence. Otherwise, he has to apologize. Any unsubstantiated allegation such as this one, a very grave one, if it is not substantiated, I repeat, it must lead to an apology from the Canadian government. And I must say that within Canada, there are many sections who are criticizing Justin Trudeau for an irresponsible statement. Canada and India have a lot of potential in a relationship. We were going ahead, but suddenly everything has been derailed. And I'm afraid things will not come back to even keel unless the Canadian government takes action as we are demanding.
Okay, and thank you so much for that comment, Mr. Dayal. Let me actually get in a Canadian voice now. Mr. Dean Baxendale, I'd like to understand from you, considering the onus of by Canada has been put on the United States of America. I'd like to understand, considering United States and India's strategic ties and how they are global partners. There is a lot of diplomatic engagements that the two nations go ahead and do. There was an important bilateral that is just about gotten over between Dr. S. Jaishankar and Antony Blinken, and so much has been said about it. But what has come out of the minutes of the meeting is that US and India discussed full range of issues, and that included key outcomes of India's G20 presidency, creation of India, the Middle East and European Economic Corridor and other things, but nothing on Canada and India. So why is Canada really pushing for a US involvement, or probably pushing them to speak? What does one read out of these statements?
So, first of all, thank you for having me. As you know, this is an extremely volatile and complex set of circumstances that have, first of all, had the Prime Minister get up in the House of Commons and make a claim that they had credible intelligence that the Indian government may have been involved with a murder on Canadian soil involving an individual to which the Indian government had filed a red corner notice with Interpol, and that became a citizen back in early 2015 in Nijjar. The complexities of the U.S.-Indian relationship, and obviously engagement by Five Eyes and Western democracies with India as a foil to China, and ultimately the awakening inside India over the past 10 years that China was no friend, is complex. In terms of the United States using Canada to forward this and potentially use it in discussions or negotiations with India seems also a crazy notion. And furthermore, I think that the Prime Minister is not in a position to provide such direct evidence, if that's what you're asking for, which begs the question: why did he bring it up in the first place? And was that something to deflect from criticism about his political performance, or was it genuine? I can't imagine that at the end of the day, that the Prime Minister went forward without having pretty substantial and credible information to base his allegation. I'm not saying that allegation is correct, true. Otherwise, I think information needs to come out further on this, but we should not be weaponizing this as a battle against India, Canada, or India, United States. We must partner together to combat what we consider existential threats to freedom and democracy. And if India wants to continue on in a democratic way in the future, as do all of the nations that we believe are aligned,
and
then we
absolutely,
need
with
to
this
work
point that you're
together.
making, Mr. Baxendale, because I'd like to also, and here again, it's a US daily that I'd be quoting from, the Washington Post, what they have gone on to say through the footage that they access through security camera, the ill-fated day in June of Nijjar's killing. Now, they have come on record and they have said that we've been told by the temple that the video is not for the media and the public because it's an ongoing investigation. I'd want to understand, and this is again, pointing fingers at Canadian authorities. Everybody understands it's an ongoing investigation. You have said it in your parliament. But why is Canada so guarded about coming out with which way is the investigation headed? Or at least get India in on any kind of movement when it is about that investigation? What explains that? Do you think this thing was just said because he had some sort of a bias that he wanted out, or probably the point that you mentioned that he wanted to, get the media glare away from his own incompetency as the Prime Minister, considering he is also looking at anti-incumbency?
Yeah. So first of all, the goal and objective of the Prime Minister is to protect all citizens of the nation of Canada, whether or not they happen to be, as being alleged, and certainly, a lot of evidence and documents put forward that Nijjar was involved with, associated with a Sikh separatist movement. No matter what, when the Indian government has been involved in spying on Canadians for decades as part of their national security interest. I don't think we should be assumed that the Prime Minister, was going out against India. It's an egregious act, no matter who perpetrated it, whatever the murder, whether or not it was a gangland murder among Sikh factions, or something perpetrated by another government. We don't know yet the evidence, but certainly. I don't believe that our Prime Minister went forward without having incredible information and insights, including confirmation from another Five Eyes country, to come out with it. Why he did that is another question and begs for further debate. And that's because normally this never would be done, no matter what the situation was. And an ongoing murder investigation continues by the RCMP in Surrey about the murder. And I think more details will come forward, but unfortunately, not until that investigation is closed.
We will talk about that ongoing investigation also in just a bit. But Lieutenant General Singh, I'd like your inputs on what has come out of the UK today. We're talking about an Indian High Commissioner who was targeted, who was not allowed to enter a Gurdwara in Scotland. There was another instance that came out from London of a restaurateur whose restaurant was sprayed with graffiti. All of that implication is only happening because Justin Trudeau, back home in his own country, has left matters so open-ended and so grave that the reactions have become so extreme. So it's only time that Canada, which is already being notorious for the secessionist elements finding that safe haven there, more and more such crimes being reported out of not just Canada, but it's happened from UK. We might hear something from, let's say, Australia next. Who is to blame for that?
Thank you, and Jai Hind to all your viewers. It's good to be on your channel to discuss this very important and topical issue. Now, if you remember, last year there was a report which was put out by Colin Bloom, who is a faith investigator, and he's an expert on comparative faiths. And that was part of a structured investigation done by UK government. He had clearly spelled out that fringe elements in UK, and he had even named Canada. In Canada, are hijacking the narrative. They are giving a bad name to that community, and there is need to tackle them. This was clearly spelled out. Unfortunately, these things are not followed through because there are vote bank compulsions and politics, which allow these governments to mollycoddle such people, and that results in this kind of thing. As a Sikh, I feel very sad. I feel very, it's very unfortunate, I must say, that my faith is being misused for such a thing.
Yeah.
Because our faith is a very inclusive faith.
Yes.
Stopping the High Commissioner from visiting a Gurdwara is something this faith just doesn't allow. We have a faith which says, Nanak Naam Leva. Anybody can come to a Gurdwara and listen to Kirtan and scriptures, partake in the langar, and here they stop the High Commissioner. It's highly condemnable. It is something which Sikh religion just doesn't allow. Now, coming to this question of Canada, it's not only India. The Bangladesh has recently put out that killers of Bangbandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, found refuge in Canada. The person is a self-confessed and self-proclaimed killer of the father of nation of Bangladesh, and he is hiding in Canada. That apart, 3 or 4 years back, Karima Baloch, a very helpful kind of a lady who was involved with NGOs from Pakistan, who was
Yes, absolutely. And these are good points that you're making, Lieutenant General Singh. But let me actually bring in Prabhu Dayal on this also. Mr. Dayal, I'd also like to understand, and that's an important point, where people who've been exiled from their own country found that safe spot in Canada. Karima Baloch, despite living in exile in Canada, was killed allegedly by Pakistan authorities. And that also was an extraterritorial killing that had happened at that time. Justin Trudeau decided to stay mum. So what was this selective outrage all about? Even the Bangladesh example that Lieutenant General Singh gave. One thing that has happened is also that there are evidences piling up, such as these, against the Trudeau administration. And it's not just these instances in the past. Very recently, in fact, today we broke the story on how Sukh Dhaliwal, who is a Canadian MP, he, in fact, is allegedly very, very closely associated with Hardeep Singh Nijjar. He was allegedly also responsible for getting Nijjar the permanent residency in Canada. And then he goes on to accuse India of sending separatist elements to Canada. How does one read those statements? And how is this approach going to be looked at?
Well, there are many aspects to these issues which you have mentioned. First of all, it is very clear that Justin Trudeau is indulging in vote bank politics. He does not have a majority in Parliament and he needs outside support. That support has been given to him by Jagmeet Singh Dhaliwal, who heads the New Democratic Party. And with Jagmeet Singh Dhaliwal's support, Justin Trudeau is able to keep his government intact. Otherwise, his government would fall. Secondly, there is a clear nexus between the Canadian intelligence services and the late Hardeep Singh Nijjar, because Nijjar's son himself has gone on record as saying that Nijjar used to meet the Canadian intelligence people regularly. He met them just 2 days before he was killed. He was again scheduled to meet them a few days later. So there is something very suspicious in this interaction between the Canadian intelligence and Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Thirdly, who was this Hardeep Singh Nijjar? He had flown from India on a forged passport.
And despite being on the no-fly list, and that's an important point that you have raised, yes.
Yes, there was an Interpol red corner alert against him. And this was issued in 2014. There were over a dozen criminal cases against Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, why didn't the Canadian government take any action? because it was trying to please certain sections of the extremist Sikh population. Now, let me mention that there is only a fringe element within the Sikh community which would subscribe to the views of the Khalistan supporters. Sikhs are the cream of Indian society. They have done well in all areas. The armed forces, civil and administration, the political arena.
No, absolutely,
business.
and there must be some
So
sort of a
they don't
reason
subscribe.
why these fringe elements are being given that safe spot, safe haven in Canada. Why are they being allowed into Canada? Is it not for that vote bank politics? And that is a serious question that Justin Trudeau and his administration needs to answer. And about the investigation, that was the point that was raised by one of the speakers, Mr. Dean. The other aspect is that there have been many loopholes in that investigation, that ongoing investigation, where the Canadian police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, in fact, and the Surrey Police together acted much later, in fact, half an hour later from when that incident in June really happened. So what does it say about the law and order situation in the country? And then casting aspersions on India, not coming up with an evidence, is something that is not going to go down well for Justin Trudeau. Let's see how does this end up playing out. We'd have to thank all our guests for joining us on the explosive weekend debate this evening. Unfortunately, that's all the time that I had. Thank you so much for watching.